All right, here's the rundown. The Mavericks have won 4 in a row. We're going to see what they did better and how they can stay the course without Luka. Then I have 3 teams to watch around the league because they've been winning recently. And we'll see how the Celtics ended the Cavaliers' hot start. And check the NBA Cup standings. And finally, I have 2 top performers because they both made history again. You ready? Let's go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Control Room. I'm your host, Esrael. Now, I had a lot of fun putting these stats together. Some of them are going to go through either Thursday or Friday. Some of them maybe even Saturday. But I'll do my best to let you know how far these go. Let's start right at the beginning. The Mavericks in the first quarter have gotten much better over their 4-game win streak. We're going to look at the first quarters through the first 15 games for the Mavericks, starting with the first 12 games, where they shot only 45.1% from the floor, 28.3% from 3, 50.8% effective field goal percentage, and a 53.9% true shooting percentage. Compare that with the first quarters of the next 3 games, so this excludes the game against Denver. They shot 58.3% from the floor, 47.8% from 3. They had a 66% effective field goal percentage and a 67.1% true shooting percentage. So you can tell the Mavs got better in the first quarter, and that has allowed them to get wins at the end of games. But what else was missing? Their defense was having some problems here and there because they were missing P.J. Washington. And I have some numbers here that are very important for why P.J. is important to this team. Entering Friday, November 22nd, the Mavericks allowed 0.81 points per possession on isolation possessions, which led the NBA, and P.J. Washington himself only allowed 0.43 points per possession on ISO possessions, which was the 6th best in the NBA. He's one of their best perimeter defenders. So without him, the defense as a whole goes through these rough patches. Now that he's returned, not only has he allowed the Mavericks to be better defensively, but he also is an offensive presence. And so that has made the Mavericks better throughout the whole course of a game. Let's look at what the Mavericks have been with and without PJ in the first 15 games. In games that P.J. Washington played, the Mavericks have allowed only 106.9 points per game. They've allowed 43% shooting from the floor, 32.4% from 3. They themselves have scored 17.2 second chance points per game. The Mavericks also had a 105.1 defensive rating and an 8.9 net rating. But when PJ was not available, the Mavericks allowed 114 points per game and 48.2% shooting from the floor, as well as 36.8% from 3. The Mavericks also only scored 10.6 second chance points per game, had a higher defensive rating of 115.5, which is about 10 points worse, and a 0.1 net rating. Clearly, P.J. Washington has been the spark. Yes, Luka Dončić is missed when he's not on the floor. But when he is missing, the Mavs have to win by committee. And what they tend to do is they move a little bit faster. They have a bit more energy because they know they are not going to be able to rely on Luka's scoring. Because of that, everyone starts playing at a higher caliber. They start playing with a little more focus. And you get games like you saw against Denver. Now, one of the players on this Mavericks team did not play well in terms of shooting against Denver. That was Klay Thompson. But he has plenty of games where he is still a marksman. And so I want to highlight this for him. Klay Thompson this season, when making 5 or more threes in a game, has scored 19.8 points per game, shot 42.3% from the floor, a staggering 48.2% from 3, and did it in only 29 minutes per game, which is the second fewest minutes by a player making 5 or more threes in 5 or more games this season. The only player in the NBA that has fewer minutes per game is Peyton Pritchard with Boston at 27.2 minutes per game. Now, how about clutch time? Because there's still more to improve. Without Luka on the floor in OKC and in Denver, the execution was a little bit sloppy offensively. Defensively, they had plenty of great plays, especially against Denver with Lively coming back for those weak side blocks. But where the Mavericks need to get better is by not blowing leads. They blew a 24-point lead. Now, I will give credit to P.J. Washington for how he finished down the stretch in Denver, and especially to Najee Marshall with a career-high 26 points in Denver. So there is more on the table that the Mavericks can offer, even without Luka. But I would like them to not blow leads and to not give up stretches of 7 points in a row in clutch time here and there. I want to see them improve in that area because the execution is still not as good as it was a year ago. Now, how do the Mavericks stay the course? Because Luka's going to be out for a week with this wrist injury. I got some stats on that as well. In the Mavericks' last 2 games entering November 22nd, they're scoring 126.5 points per game on 50% shooting from the floor, 43.1% from 3, 82% from the free throw line, and they're getting 50.5 rebounds per game. That is a high number, especially for a Mavericks team who I had to watch only get 34 a game 2 years ago. Now, those 2 games were 2 straight games where the Mavericks had 7 or more double-digit scores, and that happened for the first time since November 3rd to the 6th of 2019. And if you include the game at Denver, they also had 7 double-digit scores in that game. And so the Mavs now have 3 straight games with 7+ double-digit scores for the first time since March 25th to the 28th, 2016. That's insane. And when you take into account that that was an NBA Cup game in Denver, the Mavericks have put themselves in a really good position to reach the knockout round. And so in the next segment, we're going to look at the standings, but not before we see some teams to watch, because we've got 3 teams that have been winning at a really good rate. That is coming up next. We've got some teams to watch around the league, so let's start with the Los Angeles Lakers. Leading the way for LA are Anthony Davis and LeBron James. AD this season is scoring 31.3 points per game, shooting 57.3% from the floor, 43.3% from 3, getting 11.2 rebounds per game, 1.9 blocks per game, and scoring 18.3 paint points per game. LeBron James, on the other hand, is scoring 24 points per game as he is no longer the focal point of the offense. Shooting 51.8% from the floor, 43% from 3, recording 8.3 rebounds per game, 9.3 assists per game, and scoring 11.1 paint points per game. Now, AD's points per game, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and paint points per game, as well as LeBron James's 3-point percentage, are all career highs. And it's not just these 2 superstars that are elevating the LA Lakers. Their new rookie out of Tennessee, Dalton Knecht, man, let me tell you, this kid is something special. Look at these numbers here. Tuesday versus the Jazz, which was an NBA Cup game, Dalton Knecht scored a career-high 37 points on 12 of 16 shooting, 9 of 12 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, with 5 rebounds and a steal. His 9 threes tied the rookie record for most threes in a game. Now that was one game, sure, okay. How about 5 in a row? Let's look at these numbers. Knecht's last 5 games entering November 23rd has seen him scoring 22.8 points per game on 63.6% shooting, 63.2% from 3, 85.7% from the free throw line, and he was doing all this in 34.3 minutes per game. He had not scored 10 plus points since October 30th before this 5-game streak. The Lakers under first-year head coach J.J. Redick have utilized an offensive system that favors Anthony Davis over LeBron James. But what's been ailing the Lakers over the last couple of seasons has been their inability to shoot from three. And so Dalton Knecht was drafted to help alleviate that burden. Now, the Lakers have started their season 3-0. They went 4-4 through 8 games, and then they won 6 in a row. And so they're going to have these streaks where they're up, where they're down, but they have somewhat answered their issues with three-point shooting through Dalton Knecht, although he is one person, and they might need more production from some of the other shooters they have on their roster, such as D'Angelo Russell and Gabe Vincent, as well as the injuries that they're dealing with on the roster. Jared Vanderbilt is someone who comes to mind because he hasn't been on the floor as of late. Now, the Lakers have not been the only team that went on a win streak. The Orlando Magic found a way to win plenty of games without their superstar in Paolo Banchero. Look at these numbers right here. The Orlando Magic in their last 8 games entering November 22nd went on this streak through their defense. They had a 7-1 record over those 8 games, scoring only 107.9 points per game, but they allowed only 96 points per game. They shot 46.3% from the floor, 31.7% from 3, 83.1% from the free throw line, and they had a 12.7 net rating. The opponent points per game and the net rating were the best in the NBA in that span. I mentioned the Magic have gone on this streak mainly because of their defense, but it's not just their overall defense. It's their fourth quarter defense, which happens to be the best in the NBA. Look at this. In the fourth quarter this season, the Magic allow only 22.8 points per game on 39.9% shooting. The Magic have a defensive rating of 94.4, a net rating of 14.7, and their opponent plus minus is a minus 3.3. All of those categories are first in the NBA. And here's a fun note. Magic opponents have the worst free throw percentage, which is 67.3% in the fourth quarter, and the worst clutch free throw percentage at 55% against the Magic this season. Just ask the Lakers because they could not make a free throw to save their lives at the end of that game. Speaking of the Lakers missing free throws down the stretch, that wasn't the only thing that beat them. The Wagner brothers had something to say about it, especially Franz Wagner. In Thursday's game against the Lakers, Franz Wagner scored a season-high 37 points on 13 of 26 shooting from the floor, 4 of 10 shooting from 3, 7 of 8 from the free throw line, recorded 6 rebounds, and had a career-high 11 assists, as well as 4 steals, and had his first career game with 30-plus points and 10-plus assists, while also hitting the game-winning shot with 2.5 seconds remaining. Along with Franz, his brother Mo scored a season-high 19 points on 7 of 13 shooting, 1 of 2 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, grabbed 5 rebounds, and had a season-high 4 assists as well as a block. These two guys have been leading the way for the Magic without Paolo Banchero, but you bring back Paolo into this system, now you have really good scores on the floor, and you also have a lot of length, as well as defense. You've got guys like Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jonathan Isaac, Anthony Black. There's a lot of places, a lot of people that the Magic can turn to at any moment's notice, but it goes through the Wagner brothers, especially Franz Wagner, because he's starting to reach all-star level with the way that he's playing this year. Bring Paolo back into that, the Magic are most likely going to be in the playoffs as a top 6 seed. They could find themselves at the 4 spot, maybe even the 3 if they continue winning at this rate. Because outside of Boston and Cleveland, really their only competition is going to be New York. They could easily see themselves as one of the teams hosting for the first round of the playoffs for games 1 and 2 and potentially game 7, which they didn't get to do last season against Cleveland. Now, next up are the Milwaukee Bucks. Because of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Wednesday against the Bulls, he scored 41 points on 70.8% shooting from the floor. That gave him his 21st career game with 40 points and 70% shooting. And that is now the most in NBA history, breaking a tie with Adrian Dantley. For me, the Bucks' success starts and ends with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I know Damian Lillard is there, but without Giannis, the Bucks are not a contender. Can they go 8-1 in their last 9 games in November? Or be a top 4 seed by New Year's? To both of those questions, I think the answer is no, but I think they'll be in a much better position then than they were earlier in the season, which saw them near the bottom of the East. Now, move up to the very top of the East, where you see Cleveland and Boston, and they got to match up for an NBA Cup game on Tuesday. But Boston did something that, if you've paid attention to them, which I hope you have because they are the defending champions, they continue to do something perplexing in a good way for them. How they finish quarters is otherworldly. Look at the point differential for the Celtics by quarter versus the last 3 minutes of each period. The point differential for the full first quarter is 3.9, whereas in the last 3 minutes, it's 3.6. In the second quarter, the full quarter is at 1.5, whereas the last 3 minutes is at 2.1. In the third quarter, the full quarter is 2.4, but the last 3 minutes is 1.9. And in the fourth quarter, the point differential is 1.6 for the full quarter and 0.3 for the last 3 minutes. The Celtics have had 3 games in overtime so far this season. The full 5-minute period for overtime has a point differential of 1.3, but the last 3 minutes of overtime has a point differential of 2. What does this mean? This means the Celtics do their damage in the last 3 minutes of every quarter. You might feel like you're hanging around for, 7, 8, 9 minutes, but then in those last 3 minutes of every quarter, the Celtics find a way to separate themselves from you. And suddenly the lead goes from, let's say, 5 to 12 or 10 to 20. The Mavericks got a really bad taste of that in game 1, especially with Kristaps Porzingis, and he hasn't played all season. So you add him to what the Celtics are doing now, and they will be unstoppable. So not only has this been a trend for the Celtics in that game against Cleveland, this has been what they've done all season. That is what other teams have to deal with when playing Boston. It's not just how can you hang around with them. It's how can you make sure they don't separate from you. Because at some point they will, since they keep doing it all the time. That's why I have them at the very top of the East, even though Cleveland got off to that hot start that they did. Now, that Cup game has serious consequences for their group. We're going to look at that group as well as every group in the NBA. So look at the East. Let's snake our way from Group C to Group A. So starting with Group C, the reason why I said that win for Boston was consequential to the whole group is because Atlanta currently leads the group with a 2-1 record, even though they have a -1 point differential, because they have a head-to-head win against Boston in NBA Cup group play. That is why the Celtics are currently looking at a wildcard spot unless Atlanta somehow loses and Boston can win a third game. Cleveland is now 1-1, a half game back, with a +15 point differential. Chicago is in fourth at 1-1, and Washington is 0-2. Milwaukee leads Group B with a 2-0 record and a +26 point differential. Detroit is also 2-0, but they're in second because they only have a +4 point differential. Miami's in third at 1-1 with a +13. Toronto's in fourth at 0-2, and behind them is Indiana, also at 0-2. In Group A, Orlando leads this group with a 2-0 record and a +37 point differential. Behind them, the Knicks are also 2-0, but with a +14 point differential. Philadelphia is behind both of them with a 1-2 record, and then behind them is Brooklyn, also 1-2, and then behind them is Charlotte at 0-2. Moving on to the Western Conference, in Group A, Houston leads with a 2-0 record and a +49 point differential. Behind them are the LA Clippers, Portland Trail Blazers, and Minnesota Timberwolves, each at 1-1. And then the Sacramento Kings are in 5th at 0-2. The LA Lakers lead Group B with a 2-0 record and a plus 11 point differential. OKC's behind them at 1-1 with a plus 10 point differential. And San Antonio is behind OKC, also at 1-1 with a plus 1 point differential. Phoenix is in 4th, who also has a 1-1 record, but they're at minus 8 in point differential, and that's why they're in 4th and not 2nd. And behind them, in 5th, is the Utah Jazz at 0-2. Moving on to Group C, the Golden State Warriors are the only team so far to have clinched a spot in the knockout round. They lead with a 3-0 record and a plus 12 point differential. Behind them is the Dallas Mavericks with a 2-1 record and a plus 41 point differential, and so they look to be the favorites for the wildcard spot. Behind them is the New Orleans Pelicans at 1-2 with a minus 38 point differential. They have already been eliminated mathematically from knockout contention. Behind them is the Denver Nuggets at 1-2 with a plus 2 point differential, and then behind them is the Memphis Grizzlies at 0-2 with a minus 17 point differential. Now that we've gone through the NBA Cup standings, I have some top performers for you that have made history again. Coming up next. If you've made it this far, welcome to the postgame. I have 2 top performers for you. First, Russell Westbrook, because Tuesday at Memphis, he became the first player in NBA history with 200 career triple-doubles. At this point, everyone is trying to catch Westbrook. Oscar Robertson at 181, Magic Johnson with 138. Nikola Jokic currently has 137, and so he's about to tie Magic pretty soon. Behind Jokic is LeBron James at 117 and Jason Kidd at 107. The next top performer I have is James Harden, because last Sunday against the Jazz, he passed Ray Allen for the second most three-point field goals made all time. Stephen Curry, of course, leads the way at 3,799, but now it's James Harden in second at 2,982 going into Sunday. Ray Allen is now in third with 2,973. Damian Lillard is still in fourth at 2,647. Reggie Miller is at 2,560 in fifth. And Klay Thompson is right behind him with 2,528 three-pointers. So shout out to both Russell Westbrook and James Harden for making history and being the top performers in this episode. In the next episode, we'll have an NBA Cup update again and look at how the Mavericks have played throughout their next stretch of games. Now I have an upcoming schedule for you. Monday, November 25th, the Mavericks will play the Atlanta Hawks at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central on Mavs TV. Tuesday, November 26th, we have more NBA Cup games. The Milwaukee Bucks will play the Miami Heat at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on TNT, followed by the Los Angeles Lakers and the Phoenix Suns at 10 p.m. Eastern on TNT. So that does it for me. Thanks for being here. Make sure to download this episode, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time. Let's hit the rollout.